Hello friends, my name is Marines, and every year I reach out to different contributors within the book community and ask them for their favorite and least favorite picks for the year. I love putting together these collaborations, and I love getting all of these different takes on books and favorites and least favorites all in one shot. Today we'll be talking about our least favorite books of 2017.
Hey everybody, Thomas here from SFF180. For my disappointment of 2017, gonna have to say Artemis by Andy Weir, his long-awaited follow-up to The Martian, which of course was a global phenomenon. But this one, yeah, despite a well-drawn, very realistic setting on a lunar city, terrible characterizations, often embarrassing, cringy dialogue, and a central plot involving a heist that's just kind of bland and uninteresting, makes this one not just a sophomore slump, it's a sophomore faceplant right into a crater.
Hello bookworms, it's Jade from Bedtime Bookworm. My least favorite book of 2017 was The Circle by Dave Eggers. I really had a hard time connecting with or understanding any of the characters in this book, especially the main character. I didn't understand anything she did. I had a really hard time suspending my disbelief and believing that all the people that worked at this company would do things that they did. The plot was really wandering and I had a hard time knowing where it was going. And to be completely honest, the way that the book concluded was very underwhelming.
Hi, I'm Kayla and I'm from the channel Heroic Pages. My most disappointing read of this year was A Sudden Appearance of Hope by Claire North. Usually I'm okay with Claire North's books, but this one was a bit disappointing and I didn't really enjoy the story as much. Mostly I was disappointed because this story promised one thing, and while I got that, the story just derailed on a different plot that I was not expecting, and it was weird, and I just didn't enjoy it as much as I thought I would. I didn't really care about this new plot that was going on throughout this book, and I wanted to know more about what I knew from reading the description, and so disappointment ensues.
Hi, I'm Alice. I don't have a booktube channel, but you can find me on Twitter at Metamorphosis. So my least favorite book of the year was Les Lames du Cardinal by Pierre Pevel, which is in English. It was translated under The Cardinal's Blades. It's an historical fantasy kind of fiction. And it really just was very sexist. Like most of the female characters were just introduced naked in their bed and in their baths, and they were just always described as sexy and beautiful, and you can all tell stuff about their breasts and their tights, and it was a mess. And the only female character that wasn't sexy was the one fat woman that everyone was making fun of, and at some point she wanted to give some kind of fashion advice, but everyone was making fun of her because how can she give fashion advice when she's fat? Hence ugly. And that was the point of that scene, and it just made me very mad. So yeah, sexism and fatphobia, and also the world building just wasn't very good. It's historical fantasy happening in Paris, and the author obviously made a lot of research about that time period, and he really wanted to give us all the information, but he was giving information at weird points in the story. Like in the middle of a scene, the narrator will just cut the scene and tell a fact about Paris at that time. Just the fact was just kind of related to the scene, so it was just really weird. It all felt forced, and yeah, it was my worst read of the year. I wanted to read more in French this year, because as you can tell I'm French, but that was a fail. I read this one in January and I never read any other book in French in 2017. That was the last one. So I'm going to try again in 2018.
Hi, I'm Paige. I'm from the Minimalist Booktuber, and my least favorite book of 2017 was King's Cage by Victoria Aveyard. I know that a lot of people don't like this series, which is well within their right, but I am trash for it, or at least I was trash for it until I read the third book. The only good thing to come out of this book was the introduction of Evangeline's POV chapters. What was formerly a one-person POV book became 3 different perspectives, and honestly, one of them one was complete trash and I did not like it, and it was half of the novel. The plot dragged because of this new character's introduction, and we just weren't given enough time with her in the second book to care about what happens to her in the third, to be honest. And the reason I don't like this character, because she is a bit of a brat. I said it.
Hi, I'm Kate, and if you want to talk to me about books, you can find me on my channel, which is Kate Hickey, which is just my name, and then also on Twitter, where my handle is @Caterwall. My least favorite book of 2017 was A Conjuring of Light by V.E. Schwab, which is the third in the Shades of Magic series, which was all bad. I didn't like any of these books particularly, but I thought the first one had a lot of potential, so I decided to read the whole series. The second book was awful, and I thought maybe it's just middle book syndrome, and maybe the last one will really pull it together for me. But it didn't. It got worse and worse as the series went on, and finally the last one was just such a clusterfuck of bad narrative decisions, mediocre writing, and bad execution of moderately good ideas, and it just made the whole series just ugh for me. I thought that Schwab's world building was pretty bare bones and boring. It didn't really give the world an atmosphere. None of this has any meaning, and I just found that to be really frustrating throughout the whole series, but particularly in A Conjuring of Light, I felt like Schwab's pacing was absolutely terrible, and nothing made any sense about why it was happening. It just happened. It was a lot of plot contrivance that I thought was just terrible. A Conjuring of Light is basically just the dumpster exploding after it's been on fire for a few hours.
Hello fellow bookworms, it's Katie from TheMirrorWorld here on Booktube. One of my least favorite books that I've read this year was Caraval by Stephanie Garber. I know, it's pretty popular, so this is going to be a bit controversial, but I just thought it is this kind of average YA fantasy with its predictable plot, a self-centered whining protagonist, and a romance without any trace of chemistry. In short, exactly the kind of book that I would normally avoid. I read it, however, because it was marketed as some kind of new Night Circus, which is one of my favorite books of all time. So yeah, I did get in with kind of high expectations, and I was pretty disappointed and let down by pretty much everything. The only thing that could have saved the book for me would have been the writing, but unfortunately the attempt at flowery language was pretty mediocre. So yeah, needless to say that this was definitely not the book for me, and to be honest, I hated every minute of the reading experience.
Hi everyone, my name is Leah from the YouTube channel Drums of Autumn. My least favorite book that I read in 2017 was Wintersong by Jae-Jones. This is a well-beloved book, but I don't understand where the hype is coming from. This is sold as a romance story, but it's just that. There's lots of problems in it, with consent especially. Because it is initiated by the female main character, I think a lot of people don't notice it, but she basically constantly forces herself on the male character, and he says no several times. She just doesn't stop. After the characters do end up having consensual sex, the female main character says that she feels like a new person, that everything about her life has changed, that she's an adult now, that she doesn't want to be called Liesel anymore, but she now wants to be called Elizabeth, which is, in my opinion, one of the most harmful tropes you can put in your YA novel. This story takes place in Germany, so there's German words in it and German sentences, and they are not grammatically correct whatsoever, so you can clearly tell that they didn't really put a lot of effort in making this setting believable. And in general, I just found the story to be very boring. The writing is very repetitive and tries to be all beautiful and nice, but it just doesn't work out.
My least favorite book should not really be a surprise to anybody who has followed my channel or my Twitter this year, but I have to say that my least favorite was Handbook for Mortals by Lani Sarem. I read other very bad books this year as well, but I think that one, this was probably the worst written, and two, the author's behavior throughout the year really just put a sour taste in my mouth. Not that there's ever any excuse for the kind of behavior that she exhibited, but you would think that she was championing a really great book, or even one that had any literary merit or entertainment value, which her book had neither. As I mentioned, it was poorly written, it was poorly edited, it had a very flimsy plot, all of the characters were either underdeveloped or unlikable. She wrote things that just plain didn't make sense, her descriptions were terrible, there was just nothing of value to be found within this book, and the only reason that I made it through was because I was live tweeting and that made the experience bearable.
Hi guys, my name is Michelle and you can find me on my booktube channel called Books Michelle. My least favorite read of 2017 was definitely Stalking Jack the Ripper by Kerri Maniscalco. The main character is called Audrey Rose and she is the worst main character ever. She's trying to solve the Jack the Ripper murder mystery and she's supposed to be really smart, except that she cannot solve a single clue. Even when it's staring her right in the eyes, she cannot solve a single thing, and yeah, I just was really annoyed by that. Also, Audrey Rose is supposed to be this amazing, strong feminist, except that she really is not. Her being a feminist mostly consists of her whining and complaining about how she doesn't need men in her life and how she doesn't want to follow the rules of society every single page. She also thinks that she is a lot better than all those other stupid women from her time period who do follow the rules of society. She looks down on them and she feels sorry for them because they are so stupid and empty-headed. And if you look down on other women like that, then in my eyes you can never be a true feminist. Also, the whole murder mystery plot was incredibly predictable. I knew who Jack the Ripper was like 30 pages in. I had so many more problems with this book, but I think this might be the worst book I have ever read in my entire life. It was very insulting to me, it was very insulting to women in general, and it was also very disrespectful towards its time period. So yeah, Stalking Jack the Ripper, I really hated it.
My least favourite book this year was Did You See Melody by Sophie Hannah. I gave it 2 stars, so it wasn't completely terrible, but it was just a thriller without any thrill, so it was really disappointing because I was looking forward to it. The main character in this book is really dull and really boring, and I just didn't feel for her at all, and I kind of didn't care about her. This book is filled with a cast of characters that to me are all really unrealistic as people. They're all really exaggerated, and the entire plot underlying this thing that she's trying to unravel and find out about, I found that whole thing really unrealistic, like it would never happen, and so it didn't have a satisfying ending, it didn't have a believable ending, and in the end it all kind of amounted to nothing, I think.
Hi everybody, my name is Rachel and I am from Rachel's Page Turners here on the Booktubes. Today I'm going to be talking about my least favorite book for 2017, and that is Salem's Lot by Stephen King. Like most Stephen King books, it is a thick lady. It is so big. But Stephen King felt compelled to introduce everybody in this town. I really wish I was exaggerating when I say that 3/4 of the way, this giant book, he was still introducing characters and telling me how they died. And at this point it was like, I do not care. Can we please just move on with the story? And of course he kept introducing all these characters and they were incredibly unlikable characters. There was sexual assault, bullying, physical assault. It's just, they were all terrible people and I was rooting for the vampire. The main character, who's Ben, I don't know why he's even listed as a main character since he barely saw any screen time. Eventually, towards the end, he goes, I think I'm gonna die. I'm like, well, I hope so, because at least the story will freaking end at this point. There was just so much going on that didn't need to happen. I feel like if I had edited this book, I would have taken so much out and would have gone from this to maybe like that. I did not rate this 1 out of 5 stars on Goodreads though. I rated this 1.5 stars because the half star is because Stephen King did write a believable world for me to really dislike these characters. And there was one character, the priest. What happened to him really broke my heart, and because I did have some feeling towards this book, thanks to this priest, I rated this 1.5 stars on Goodreads.
Hey guys, my name is Olivia and my channel is Hey Olivia Reads, and my least favorite book of 2017 was Kill the Boy Band by Goldie Moldavsky. Now, I had basically overhyped myself for this book, and when I went into it, it was not what I was expecting at all. There were a lot of tropes that I didn't like that were overused in this book, such as things like girl-on-girl hate, and there was a really bad case of the I'm not like other girls syndrome, as well as just a lot of things that really didn't sit well with me and a lot of contradicting viewpoints than what I thought this book was going to be going into it. It also just wasn't the same kind of tone that I really like when it comes to reading books. It's a little more creepy, a little more intense, a little more macabre than I would have liked.
So it wasn't really my favorite, and it definitely falls under my least favorite category of 2017.
My name is Alexis, and you can find me on my channel, which is The Sloth Reader, here on YouTube. My least favorite book of 2017 was Beautiful Broken Girls by Kim Savage. This is a story with very convoluted writing that passes itself off as beautiful, characters who are both one-dimensional and actual stereotypes. It's also highly offensive in the romanticization of a character who romanticizes another character's childhood trauma. There was also many parts in the book that made little sense, and the ending did little to clarify what actually happened in the story. There were so many plot elements that were brought up and never fully resolved, and it felt like a mash of every other thing we've seen in a YA contemporary before, except much more offensive and problematic. So, didn't like this one.
Hey, my name is Mafalda, and you can find me on Twitter on @mafzoekt. I'll start with my least favorite book, which was When Dimple Met Rishi by Sandhya Menon. Overall, I was just really disappointed with this book. The plot, the romantic plot, just felt like it was going on circles, and the characters didn't respect each other's wishes, and it was just overall a relationship that, I mean, when it happened it was cute, but the build-up was just forced and weird, and it didn't work for me. Also, the side characters, they just they gave them some weird plot lines, so I also didn't like that. The dialogue overall was just a little bit choppy, and at times we're talking about something and then they started talking about something else completely with no segue whatsoever. I was expecting this book to be about Indian culture and expectations, and at the beginning it was, and then it morphed into this weird romantic comedy that I didn't enjoy that much because it felt really, really forced.
Hi, I'm Lynell, and you can find me on Facebook, Twitter, and on my blog Weekend Reader. And my least favorite novel for 2017 had to be Dark Matter. Definitely a lot of hype on Booktube, and I fell into the hype. I thought it was a compelling premise. You know, the what if I made a different decision, my life could be different, and so I thought, maybe, let's read it. Now, what I will say is that there was a lot of anxiety when I was reading it, and so that was definitely done well. What I didn't like was that there was definitely some pacing issues for me. In the beginning of the book, I felt like it was really, really slow, and then it just started moving quickly, and then it just kept moving quickly. And I'm assuming that it was done that way because it was marketed as a suspense novel. But I think for me, it was done in a way that was just to create chaos, at least for my experience. The other thing that I didn't enjoy while I was reading the book is that the main character for me was very unlikable, and I will say that I don't need to enjoy the main character, but if I want him to die, that says a lot about the storyline. A lot of the side characters felt to me like they were disposable. By the way, don't go in the box. Don't go in the box. You're gonna die. So I don't want to give away too much, because if you do want to read it, I don't want to spoil it. But don't go in the box. And so I felt like a lot of the side characters were just disposable. As the storyline progressed, I was so done, and it was not enjoyable. And then it just ended. It just ended. And so, as you can tell, I didn't enjoy the book. And I typically enjoy suspense novels, and I just did not enjoy this one at all. And I'm sorry, a lot of people did. I just wasn't one of them.
These were our least favorites of 2017. You can click the link on the screen to be taken to our favorites of 2017. Thank you so much for watching this video, and I will see you guys soon. How are you gonna come at Angie Thomas with the book Handbook for Mortals?